Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Gilda Hilaire, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Salesforce. Today, we're going to have a live discussion on one of my favorite topics, reply mail management, featuring Elliot and Andrea, moderated by Jenna. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will try to address these during the presentation and at the end. We will also send the recording to the webinar and any links mentioned during this presentation in the next day or two. So be on the lookout for that email. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Elliot.
Thank you very much, Gilda. Well, I think we'll get straight into it. As Gilda mentioned in the introduction, Andrea and myself will be presenting today and answering your questions on reply mail management, and Jenna will be assisting with moderating your questions. We've decided to go and start our session today just with a brief overview of RMM to provide context for those who aren't familiar with the feature. So let's get straight into it. Firstly then, how does reply mail management work in Salesforce Marketing Cloud? Well, the first thing that occurs is that an email is sent to a subscriber from the platform. And if a subscriber replies to the email that they received, there are a few things that happen with that response. Firstly, if an auto response email has been triggered, like an out of the office response, then the feature can ignore the reply and not process it further. Then, if the subscriber replies with an unsubscribe term like remove or opt out or even unsubscribe, then the subscriber is unsubscribed from the all subscribers list on the platform. And these terms can either appear in the email subject line or in the first 200 characters of the email body. Optionally, you can configure an auto response email. For example, if you want to acknowledge the receipt of the email and explain that someone will respond in 2 business days, then remaining responses, that is, other than auto responses and manual unsubscribe requests, are routed to a designated email address. And that's the point of disembarkation with a platform. Any future email exchange will occur between the subscriber and the designated sender. Let's now take a look at how to configure reply mail management in Marketing Cloud. Now, there are 4 sections in the reply mail management page, which can be accessed from Email Studio or Marketing Cloud Setup. Let's take a closer look at these settings. Email display name is the first field we see here. This is the reply name that appears in the from field of the subscriber emails client when the subscriber replies to your email. The next field, reply subdomain, is the subdomain portion used to send emails from the platform. Now, in the majority of cases, this should match your SAP subdomain. The important thing here is that it needs to be a domain that's been delegated to Salesforce Marketing Cloud. The email reply address field is the reply address that appears in the from name of your subscriber's email client when the subscriber replies to your email, but only if the DNS record is not complete. That is, the radio button here says no. If the DNS record is complete, which I'm just about to discuss, then this email address will be ignored and replaced with a unique email address username that identifies the subscriber and the send. And finally, the DNS record complete option needs to be set to yes to enable reply mail management. If it's not, as I mentioned before, email replies will be directed to the email reply address that was defined in that previous field. Now, I discussed the 2 reply filters earlier, that is auto replies and manual requests, and these are defined in this section. And we're going to be talking a bit more about this when we start to answer some questions. Next, you can choose to send an automated response as a plain text email. You can either choose a default response message template or use a custom response message. Alternatively, you can respond with an HTML email using a sender profile, which we're going to discuss later in today's session when we start to look at some of these questions that come through. And finally, you'll need to set an email address to route the remaining responses to. However, if you send an auto-response email stating that replies are not monitored, then you may want to add a black hole email address here. And you can actually use the email address sfmc@bh.exacttarget.com, which we routed to a black hole, but won't affect deliverability of your emails. Well, right now, I'm just going to hand it over to Andrea, who's going to be explaining enterprise reply mail management for those of you who aren't familiar with that feature.
All right. Thank you, Elliot. I don't know if I can.
So I'll start sharing my screen.
Do you have it open? Okay. Right. Just give me a second.
Would you like me to fill some time with some questions that we have starting to come in?
There I have the share my screen.
Okay. There we go.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see that.
All
yes,
right.
We can.
You see the Marketing Cloud one, I hope?
That's right, yeah.
Try to, no, not that. But I will just try to do it.
The setup here page, yeah.
All right, perfect. So like Elliot said, I'm not in the right account. Here it is. The standard setup for reply mail management is to be the same for enterprise, except for the fact that in enterprise you have a few additional functionalities that you can do. The first one is what is called keywords lists, and in here you can define a number. I'm not sure if there is actually a limit, but you can define a number of keywords that you want to use in those rules that Elliot already showed. So the difference between the regular reply management, and the enterprise one is that in the regular one you have a predefined list and you cannot change it, while in the enterprise one you can define your own, and therefore you can define even multiple languages. You can define common misspellings that in your country or in your business are happening, and therefore you can define the keywords for unsubscribes, out of office replies, or auto responses as well. Apart from keywords, you can set up rules where you will have a keyword list allocated to the rule, and in that rule you will tell the account what should the enterprise reply management should do. So in this case, if we have the unsubscribed multi-language list, so if someone replies and they have a keyword in the reply that is on that keyword list, we want to match the whole phrase. So we only want to look at the words by their own. Eventually, you could also say case sensitive if that's important for you. And you can define what kind of actions this rule will perform. In this scenario, you can say you want to add the email address to a master unsubscribe list, or you want to unsubscribe the email address from a publication list, and you can add the email address to a suppression list. Also in the rules, you can define per rule if you want to have forward replies, the remaining replies, if they're forwarded to a certain email address. So you can define that here. You can also say if you want to use a triggered send for that. And I'm sorry. And if you want to have an automated reply, again, using a triggered send. Apart from the actions, you can also have stop actions, which will say what happens with the email or with the subscriber after the rules were applied. And you can finally add it to collections. And collections are no more than a multitude of rules and keywords lists together. That will be for the differences of the two.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Elliot, for getting us jump started and giving us that preview into what RMM is, reply mail management is. And now we're going to start moving to some of the questions from the audience. First off, we have a lot of questions coming in around domain DNS records. So can you guys talk about the SAP for a minute and the summarize kind of the components that you need for RMM to function properly?
Sure. Andrea, do you want to answer that? Or
maybe you can get started. Sorry, I'm a bit.
Sure. Okay, of course.
Starting to
That's
figure
fine.
out.
So, yeah, of course. Jenna, would you mind just repeating the question one more time, please?
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, we're having a lot of questions come in regarding the DNS settings for people who are routing redirects through their DNS rather than using the SAP. So I was wondering if you could just start by summarizing an inventory of components that you need for the RMM to function properly within the Marketing Cloud.
All right. Sorry, I think I can take this one. I'm finally figured out with my screen here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. This is the first time for me, so.
Oh, you're doing great.
Still figure out things around here. So yes, what you'll have to do is first of all make sure you ask your Marketing Cloud account representative or your contact to Marketing Cloud either for a sender authentication package or a request directly for the reply management services. Once you have this process complete and you have filled in all the documents that they require you to, then you will have to go ahead and update your MX records. About the DNS, there is indeed not a lot of maybe information about what that does and what that checkbox does and why it's there, or if it works or not without it. But what it basically, you will have to change this in the MX record so that all the replies sent to your email emails, will then be redirected through the Marketing Cloud servers for processing. Otherwise, they will, the filters and the keywords you put, they will have no sense. And for that, I think you can contact your ISP, and they will be most likely very willing to help you replacing the reply subdomains in the zone files. And I think there is an article on the documentation which tells you exactly what subdomains you have to replace and so. But I'm pretty sure when you will request this to your account a representative from Marketing Cloud, they will help you with the right documentation there.
And the SAP kind of helps you out with that as well, right?
Yeah,
whenever you get the SAP package, they will help you out, set that up, take over that domain for you so you don't have to deal with those MX records adjustments. All right. So let's see here. So basically response mail management is basically just handling responses that come in from messages that are sent out via the Marketing Cloud or another Salesforce channel. Can you guys talk about how responses from the customers are handled on a regular basis? Like what's the normal strategy you see around this?
Sure, yeah, I can certainly talk to that. So look, you've got really a couple of options here. So you know, obviously that you've got that default behavior that I showed you where you can route all emails to a specific email address that aren't auto-responses or manual unsubscribe requests. Or you can go and further customize this at a sender profile level, where you can go and forward to a specific person and actually use something called a dynamic sender profile, which I'll discuss in a minute. Or you can actually combine this with a triggered send and a number of different actions. For example, you can actually take that response and then go and log those responses in a data extension, or even create records in Salesforce objects and do some really creative patterns. So maybe I can elaborate on that a bit further. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I'm just going to go and share my screen and probably just Google Chrome here. So I assume it's spinning. 1 second. Oh, you can all see that? Yeah, good. So this is a sender profile page. Now, down the bottom, you'll notice there's a custom reply mail management section. And this will look slightly different depending on whether you're using Enterprise RMM or not. However, the functionality is very similar. So you can choose to go and override the default rule and optionally go and forward the reply to a specific email address or username. And actually in the default RMM, you'll see another option called direct forward, which I'll discuss that now. So direct forwards, in case you've always wondered what that option does as its name explains. It will go and directly, it effectively goes and sets whatever name and email address you use as the from email address. So when someone replies, it actually bypasses RMM, and you can directly reply to that person. Now, you've got a couple of options for defining this field. So you can go and choose to forward these replies either to a static name, like you go and enter a name and someone's email address, or you can actually use this in conjunction with AmScript. So you could perhaps have a data extension containing a list of names and email addresses that you want to use as a reply email address and use inline. Sorry.
Awesome. Can you expand upon how to do that? Because we have a lot of people asking, how to customize their RMM. So maybe this is a good time to talk about that.
Of course, yeah. Okay. There are a number of different patterns. So I'm just trying to. I think I've got an example here. So we're going to be talking about this kind of in detail. But for example, let me think about this. Just 1 second. So let's say, for example, that I've created a data extension of all of my subscribers. So that is, I've got a subscriber key, and for each subscriber key, I've got a say the email address I want to go and use. And perhaps this is based on the contact_Salesforce synchronized data extension, and I want to, based on who the owner ID is, I want to go and extract. I want to go and assign the email address of the user that's assigned to that, or the owner that's assigned to that person. So we could do something like this. We simply go and using inline AmScript. I'll just put in this field here. And this is probably going to be quite awkward in this tiny little field, which I can't expand, but we'll see how we get on. So we'll do something like lookup, and then the name of your data extension. Now, I think Andrea is going to talk a bit more about kind of strategies of and best practices regarding using AmScript and having an automation, a query activity to go and populate a data extension. But let's just say I've got a data extension called reply addresses, and then the lookup function requires at a minimum 4 arguments. So then the next argument is the field we want to return. In this case is from email, and then we've got what we want to match it against, where the say subscriber email, and then is equal to a value. Now, at this stage,
what about multiple lookups, Elliot? We have a question about multiple lookups. This is a good time to stop and talk about that. What about multiple lookups? You wouldn't want to put that whole block in there, would you?
Sure.
If you had to do multiple lookups, yeah.
Andrea, do you want to talk about that, to answer that question?
Yes, indeed. So I think the question of the multiple lookups comes back quite a few times, and it's natural, and it's obviously you will end up with quite a few quite a number of multiple lookups if you have the data scattered all over the place, let's say, and you need the information from multiple places, which is perfectly normal, I think. But then best practice there would be to pre-process the data as much as possible beforehand. So if you know that the information you need is located in 4 different data extensions, then why not centralizing all that data in the sending data extension that you're going to use anyway, and put that data in there, or at least put, like Elliot said, put something that you can match the data from one other table, one other data extension, so that you only have to do one lookup. Indeed. And then you could indeed end up with so if you would want to say I want the emails to be sent from the assigned account manager or assigned owner, right, of the customer, then again, make sure that when you create the audience, you have one account manager ID or so in the sending data extension, and then you will only have to have one lookup in the end in your field. And if I figure out how it works to share my screen.
Okay, of course.
Or Elliot can go back to his. You had yours right there. Yeah.
So I'll just go and change you as a presenter, Andrea. Andrea, there we go. And you can go and.
All right. All right, so if you can see my screen now, I have an example of a simple AMP script that you can, again, if you pre-process the data, you can do only one lookup. So you would look up at the account manager's data extension, and you would want the email address from that data extension. And again, because we already have the account manager ID in the sending data extension, we would be able to match it against, and you would only have this one lookup, and there you could have also an IF, I don't know how to say this, but you could have this as
I like how you said that.
Just to make sure you have a fallback scenario as well. You don't want to have your email being errored or not sent or God knows what, just because you forgot to put a fallback scenario. So then you can just do that in the field.
What about other languages? We have several questions around other languages and getting those in there dynamically, and also tagging for other languages. So maybe you can speak to how to work with other languages with these dynamic lookups and with the keywords as well.
Yeah, so for other languages in the keywords themselves, you can easily do that in enterprise reply management, where you can again put as many keywords as whatever language as you need. In the standard reply management, there is a fixed list of keywords that are checked by default. And in the out-of-office ones, there are some translations, some localized keywords as well. Obviously not, probably not all the languages, but that's not there for unsubscribes. So for that, you would have to have enterprise reply management.
And I know you guys were going to talk about what's the difference mainly between enterprise and corporate reply mail management. I know there's some distinctions. Elliot, you spoke to those a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I'd say the main ones is that you can go and create or listen for different keywords and create these collections. But I think it's important to note at this stage that you can, in some cases, emulate enterprise RMM through using triggered sends, and perhaps I can go and talk about that a bit further. So in that screen, and let me just so I won't share the screen. So in the sender profile screen, you would observe that there's an option to go and either forward using a triggered send or reply using a triggered send. Andrea, thank you so much for bringing that up.
Well, I will
so
show it here.
Open an existing sender profile, and down the bottom, there we go, fantastic. So this is in the corporate RMM. So you can go and forward using triggered send or use an auto reply and reply using triggered send. Now this is a really, really powerful feature. Don't want to do a plug, you want to learn more, I'll tell you about it now, but I've also got a video on that in my blog, mc.chat. So you can use this feature in conjunction with some personalization strings. So personalization strings such as you're familiar with, like email ADDR and underscore subscriber key. Well, in addition to these system personalization strings, there are some specific system personalization strings which can be used with reply mail management. And if I just go and share my screen, so if I can just go and change the presenter to myself, I think. Let's see, Elliot Harper, and I'm just going to go and show Google Chrome. Here is a comprehensive list on the AMScript guide, the online version of our book, but also go and find this in the Salesforce help. Just go and search for RMM personalization strings or RMM AMScript, I think, from memory. So we can come up with interesting patterns. So we can, like, for example, underscore RMM underscore recipient email address will return the email address of the subscriber, and this one goes and returns the actual subscriber key. That is, when someone replies to an email address, it will go and identify their subscriber key. And there are some different patterns which we'll discuss later when we answer other questions. But if I just go into share now Sublime here, and oh dear, come on, what's happening here? Let's just go and click on here, the pattern. So let's have a look at, I'll just go and delete this not to confuse people. So this pattern here, I'm just going to go and zoom in. So imagine if we have this AMScript block within our triggered send email that we're using for the reply. So and in this case, where perhaps we want to go and look for a specific keyword, and based on that, we want to do something. Perhaps we want to go and log that response in a data extension. So here you can see that I'm using the system personalization data string underscore reply content, and this specific one will go and look at the text version of the reply, and actually an abstract of it, the first 10,000 characters in the reply. If it's longer than 10,000 characters, obviously it's a very long reply. But it's going to go
a lot to say.
And in this case, we're looking for a specific keyword like. Then I'm using the AMScript index of function to see whether the reply contains this specific keyword or phrase. And if it is, then I'm doing something. So in this case, I'm going to go and serialize data into a data extension as a record. So in this case, we're taking, look at this, I've got a field in my data extension called subscriber key, and I'm using this personalization string that we looked at to put in there, insert their subscriber key and their email address, and the keyword of, in this case, like. So this is just kind of just one example of a pattern, but yeah, there are kind of many use cases for this.
Well, that's actually a great use case for some of the questions that we had coming in regarding reporting around replies sent to from reply mail management, and how can you track those and check those. This is a great example of how to do a log of those. So thank you for showing us that. And on that note, I have a question that came in from the audience. How come the replies that RMM decided not to send out to the original sender? So is there a time when RMM won't send a reply that you guys know of?
I'm not sure I understand the question. As in,
yeah, I think they're asking if RMM will not send a reply or a response out if the subscriber responds. Is there a time when a response won't get sent?
So certainly there's not anything in the documentation that I'm aware of. However, when you're going to reply to an email, it's going to use one or two email addresses. So if RMM is enabled, you'll notice that the from email is substituted with a really long string, and this is a unique identifier that tells the platform who this, or relates who the subscriber is, and their list ID and their job ID and information about that original send. Now, I assume if some significant time has passed, like kind of 90 days, and similar to things like links expiring, then in that situation, it may not work because that information has been forgotten. Yeah, or maybe the subscriber's been deleted using the contact deletion process is another example. Andrea, can you think of anything else?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, if you ever had this situation and we tried to test it and you didn't receive a reply, it could also be because of the settings you did. Maybe you chose to use custom direct forwards, is it? And then obviously you will not receive an auto reply anymore from Marketing Cloud because it goes immediately to the email address you set up. So that maybe could be another reason why you don't receive it, but I can't think of anything else. No.
And that kind of answers another question that we had that came in that was said, what happens if a unsubscribed customer replies to one of the old emails? So I think it's similar to a deleted customer in that regard, right? You'll get the subscriber ID that will come through, right, in your reports, or how does that work? Does the reply get sent to somebody that has unsubscribed since it's considered transactional?
If someone subscribes to the manual unsubscribe request, is what you're saying, and that subscriber doesn't exist?
Yeah, well, say you have a commercial stream going and someone unsubscribed to an email, and then they went back a few emails back and they saw an email from you guys or from that same brand and replied to it. Will they be sent a response since they've unsubscribed from that stream?
So are you talking about an auto response, or
yes.
Like how will their message be processed? I think. I mean, I can't answer that with any certainty. It's a bit of an edge case. I haven't haven't played that exact
Definitely
one.
an edge case. Yeah, it was an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. All right. And let's see here. You talked a little bit about Service Cloud and Sales Cloud. What are the best ways to manage RMM responses with cross-cloud integrations?
Yeah, what a fantastic question. So look, there's here's one pattern that I really enjoy. I'm just going to go and share my screen again. Again, Sublime here. So and again, this starts to call out kind of the power of using AMScript and together with these reply mail management personalization strings. Imagine if I have an auto response email that I've gone and selected in my sender profile, and here's a plain text version, but this is what it could look like. So in this case, in my email, I've simply got acknowledgement saying thank you, we've received your email response, and one of our staff will reply in 3 business days. And I'm using this _reply content personalization string, which, as I said before, goes and gets an abstract of the first 10,000 characters as their reply. Alternatively, I can include that entire HTML, or there are a couple of different options. But then, and this is really exciting, I've gotten an AMScript. I get really excited about this stuff. I've got an AMScript block, which is obviously interpreted server-side. And here I'm going and creating a record in Salesforce using the create Salesforce objects AMScript function. So let me just go and talk through this. So in this case, I'm going and using the creating record in the task standard object in Salesforce. And number 5 refers to the the pairs of the fields that I'm inserting. I've always wondered why you have to define this number, why I can't count. But anyway, that's leave that for another session. And so you can see that it's going to create a new task with a status of unsubscribed. It's going to go and see who to go and assign that task to. In this case, we want to go and get, let's say that we're just sending to contacts. And we want to go and assign it to the respective owner ID. So in this case, I'm looking at the contact _ Salesforce, the owner ID, where an ID for that is, oh, that's kind of wrong, isn't it? That's a would be the oh no, that's right. Yeah, no, that's correct. So the owner ID, I get the owner ID from that contact in my synchronized data extensions, where the ID is their recipient subscriber ID. That is the subscriber key that starts with 003 that identifies a contact. And the activity date, we have to store the activity date in the ISO format. So I'm using some AMP script to go and do that. And then I've got, maybe I'm missing a comma there. And then the description. So the description field on the task object can store up to 10,000 characters. So this is kind of perfect. I'm using the reply content again, and then typesetting to email reply. So, rather than sending these ad hoc emails, you can go and create events and tasks and any record in a standard or custom object using AMP script.
That is really cool. Thank you for showing us that, Elliot. It's fun to pass data around. This is an interesting one that came from the audience. Some of the responses that they're getting from their clients or from their subscribers are not very nice. They're not very pretty to read. Is there any way they can route those negative, ugly responses someplace to a black hole, or someplace where people don't have to, take them in?
Yeah, like profanity words or something.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for jumping in there with that. I was trying to describe that appropriately for work.
Andrea, do you want to talk to that?
Well, yeah, my first thought is, if you have enterprise reply management, I guess you can have a keyword list with that, but you will need some frustrations to build that up, I guess. Otherwise, I think you can do something with what Elliot just showed, right? That you add those to a data extension. I'm not sure about yes, actually stopping the replies to go to the forwarding email address.
Yeah,
but I
mean, let me go.
But batching them someplace, like you were saying, an event or something like that, Elliot, on the sales side, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've just come up with a different pattern here, and I'm just kind of thinking on this. What I love about these sessions. So, for example, I may go and use the reply body HTML to go and imagine this. Imagine if I've got, and I have to go and test this, but I'm using a triggered send to go and send that as a forward that reply to someone. So normally, I could just have this string here in my triggered send email. However, if using that kind of index of maybe against a kind of to look up against a list, it contains a profane word, then perhaps I can use the raise error function to abort, to skip sending the email.
That's a good idea.
I mean, it should work, right? I mean,
it's why not?
But yeah, I've or alternatively, remember that probably a more sensible way to do this is using an exclusion script. So all of these personalization strings would be available for use in an exclusion script. And I say that because if you've got, because as it's a raise error, will do exactly that. And if you can start to get a lot of raise errors on triggered sends, then it can pause that triggered send. So yeah, maybe you want to go and use personalization strings in an exclusion script to look for certain patterns, or to say that, for example, if you've got a data extension containing profane rows, then you can go and look up look up rows and see whether kind of it returns a value.
Yeah, exclude those from there, or send them to somebody specific that has the constitution to deal with them on in your Salesforce worker.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. Yeah, I don't think you can route using corporate RMM. You can't change who it's routed to.
Got you. Yeah.
But you could just choose to skip sending it to them. Yeah.
Well, I was wondering if, like, with the lead, the creation of the lead object or the contact object that you just created, if you have a specific salesman that is particularly good with handling, or a customer service rep that's particularly good with handling irrational customers or something.
Of course, yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, not forward the email to them, but
but
create
take that
something
response.
in sales. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that was a good question. Yeah, thank you for asking that to the user who asked that. This is an interesting one. At what point is the reply email sent? Is it only sent to those emails that are forwarded to the remaining replies inbox? So it's a two-parter there. So at what point is the reply email sent? Is it like a normal triggered? That I'm assuming it would be. And then it says, is it only sent to those whose emails are forwarded to the remaining replies inbox? So that's the second part of that one.
So for the first part, the email, the auto reply you set up, or the reply with the triggered send you set up, will be sent only to those people that are not filtered out by the rules you set. So if you have the out of office or the auto unsubscribe, if they send unsubscribe, then they will obviously not receive not a reply anymore. But so the email is sent to the remaining. And then the second question.
The second one was, well, it was kind of a second half of that. You kind of answered it already. Is it only sent to the is it only sent to the remaining replies inbox? And yeah, you said that.
Also, I do want to touch on that just to call out. So for the auto responses, that is out of the office of replies and others. Now, obviously that there are many different patterns from email servers, and in the majority of cases, RMM will go and intercept and identify those. On their help documentation, I recall it says 90%. I think it's actually quite higher than 90%, but there are some scenarios where it may not catch it because it's in a different language or something, and you would still receive those out of the office responses. They'll be forwarded to that email address that's been defined. I just thought I'd mention that.
I have two questions here that seem interesting. I'm gonna try to back it up to the beginning of the call a little bit. Of course. To kind of the original setup. Once again, people are asking about how do they manage this with their IT departments? Could you talk more about? Anyways, I'm just going to read this straight out. This person says that they think that I think this is often a black hole for RMM setup, just because most marketers don't have insight into what MX records update more granularly. Could we talk more about what we should be asking our IT counterparts and what they will be doing in the setup? I guess this is in case you did not purchase the SAP. What would you do to get this set up? What would you go to your IT team and ask for to help the common marketer get this going?
Yeah, Andrea, you already touched on that. Do you want to?
Yeah,
you did,
indeed.
yeah.
I'm not sure if it's any different when you don't have the SAP, but for sure, what your IT department will have to do is take the MX record of your domain name server and edit those two reply to addresses so that they point to the Marketing Cloud, and those two reply addresses will be different depending on the stack you are. So that's why it's important to keep in touch with Salesforce support for those. But other than that, I'm not sure if you would have to do.
Well, yeah, I can answer this one a little bit.
Sure. Please do, Jenna, yeah.
Having to deal with it in the past, usually what I do is I will send over the documentation to the IT team that comes from Salesforce, and either that, or if I don't have the breadth of knowledge to understand exactly what to tell the IT team, I'll put them in direct contact with the Salesforce team and have them communicate with one another so we don't play a game of telephone.
Yeah,
so.
Indeed. I think that's the best indeed.
Sure, yeah. And I do want to point out, because I'd say that this that field of where you go and define that reply subdomain is the cause of confusion for many. But again, in the majority of cases, that you would have SAP, and it should simply be your SAP domain.
Yep.
So I think that the text there and around whether you've delegated or not is somewhat misleading and could be reworded.
It is.
To make it. But yeah, the 99% of the accounts that I've worked on, I always use the SAP domain in
there. Okay, now jumping back forward, bringing the presentation back forward. Sorry for jumping around. We had a lot of questions around that, so I wanted to touch on that again. Someone's asking how they test the dynamic representative's email address to make sure that that's coming through on the auto replies. So how do you test to ensure the dynamic representative's email address is showing on the replies that are being sent out via RMM?
Well, firstly, their email address is shown on the replies.
The from address, I'm assuming that's what they're asking for.
Oh, the from address. Well, firstly, on the replies, I mean, it's not unless you're using direct forwards. It's this very long string. So when a subscriber replies, RMM has to know who the subscriber is and what the send was related to and what the subject line was and stuff. So you'll see this very long email address, again, unless you've got that direct forward option enabled at the sender profile level. But I just want to make two remarks here. So firstly, the tricky thing here is that I've found that RMM that uses AMScript, say for dynamic sender profiles, it can be very challenging to debug, and so and it's impossible to accommodate for every scenario. So where maybe you're trying to look up an email address or from name that doesn't exist, well, in a data extension, what do you do? So as Andrea pointed out, it's important to have a fallback using the IIF function to go and to use something else. But it's you really need to, when using dynamic sender profiles, you need to code for resilience and consider those other scenarios. Otherwise they won't be routed.
Sorry guys, I was reading some questions from let me jump back over here to our base sheet. Let's see here. Okay, we've already talked about Salesforce. We did have a question about how nope, we've already answered that. Sorry, we have a lot of questions around how to get Salesforce connected, or Salesforce core clouds connected with the Marketing Cloud in order to send responses from or send replies back like you were showing, Elliot, to the Sales and Service Cloud, routing them appropriately. What happens if a user copies the from email address and then replies instead of hitting the reply button? Because that email address isn't in a live inbox and uses the SAP domain, where does the reply go?
Okay, so they've gone and just taken that long email address, you know, with that unique username, and just sent an email to that address. Yeah.
Yeah. So they say that they copy the from email address.
Actually the from
email address,
most likely your SAP domain then.
That's yeah.
Well, I'm afraid then nothing will happen with the email. Yeah, you can't really avoid that. Yeah, if people.
Well, hang on. So if I go and take that reply email address and just send an email to it, I mean, it's still going to obviously it will be able to go and pass that email. It knows the job ID and the list ID.
Yeah, with a reply to
Yeah, I mean, it will know who the context, it will know who the subscriber is or was who received that just from that username identifier in the reply to address. You know, you could use personalization strings to go and extract detail from that, but you would obviously lose the original email message if they were to reply to that. Yeah, so I actually need to go and test that specific scenario.
Yeah, see what happens there.
Yeah,
that's an interesting use case. Thank you for asking that question. Let's see here. Are replies stored in a Marketing Cloud data extension somewhere? Not exactly. Elliot spoke to that a little bit earlier. You want to recap that real quick?
Yeah, I'm just going. Yeah, of course. Let me just go and I'm just going to put up this code here. 1 second, and here, and I'll go and share my Sublime. Start. Come on. There we go. Fantastic. So again, if you so certainly not by default, but if you were to forward that email using a triggered send, and again, if I've let's just say I wanted to behave like a normal forwarding, that someone would receive that, then I can simply go and add some code down here. So there's the person would receive the actual reply along with the original email using this personalization string, but I've included this AMP block, which will go and serialize that data into a data extension where we've got the subscriber key, that's the person who's replying, and their email address, let's say, in the actual message they replied with. And again, using one of my favorites, this reply content personalization string, which is a text-based version of their reply, again, up to an abstract of the first 10,000 characters of their reply. You could obviously create a data extension field with an indefinite length and to serialize that in there, it's kind of as a log.
That's thank you, Elliot, for explaining that again. I like being able to log all data that we kept or that comes in and out of the Marketing Cloud. So that's very helpful. And on that note, we have another question that's kind of interesting. What happens if a customer replies with an image? Have you ever seen that happen? Do you know what the response content will look like if they
I mean,
paste an image in there?
Because images are a bit odd because they're it's going to be base64 encoded. It's not like it will be treated as an attachment. So yeah, I'm not sure really. It should.
That might be a good one to test into a little bit later on too. on your own time.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the problem is that images are just base64 encoded as binary images, and they're just very long, easily longer than 10,000 characters probably. So, I mean, that data should be there though. In theory, you'd have to go and yes, it's someone to go and send a photo, for example. I guess my concern is that due to the size of the image, it could be ridiculously large and unable to be passed. Yeah, again, we need to do a test, I think, but whether you can extract that base64 encoded part of the reply.
Or even capture the whole thing if it's base64 encoded, it might be too long. I don't know how many characters those usually are, if they exceed 10,000.
Yeah, there is a limitation. Yeah. Yes.
That was a good question there. Very good question. Okay, and then we've got about 2 more minutes here, so we're going to wrap up with one more interesting question from the original set here. Options for setting and changing sender domains to protect deliverability. Do you want to touch on that just a bit?
Not really.
Okay. We'll pull another question from. Sorry about that. Yep.
I just need some additional information. Really, I don't really understand kind of the use case there.
Got you. Yeah. I didn't either. I wasn't sure about that one either. So thank you for. Let's just skip down to. Let's see here. Couple of DMARC questions. I think those go around your deliverability, and we're going to defer to the deliverability experts with the deliverability and DMARC questions that are coming in, folks. So please reach out to your deliverability expert at the Marketing Cloud or representative at the Marketing Cloud, and they should be able to help you out with that. Let's see here. When using direct forward, will SFMC be able to honor the out of office and unsubscribe request settings?
No. So just by the fact that you use direct forwards, the email will be directed immediately to your reply to email address. So it will completely bypass reply management. You either use right? Yeah, indeed. You either use or one or the other. Otherwise, you will have to process the unsubscribe manually or make sure it still gets processed in a way.
To comply with your legal settings in your area, depending on where you're at. All right, indeed, so do you guys have anything you wanted to say to the audience before we wrap up here? I want to thank everybody for asking all these lovely questions today.
No, nothing really I want to add. Again, I'm just a big fan of using these. I guess in closing, when you use RMM together with triggered sends, either for auto replies or forwarding, and AMScript and those available personalization strings, you can really kind of start to unlock the power of this great feature and do some come up with some very creative patterns. So I encourage you to explore that.
Yeah.
Good way to interact with your customers and never send them to a no reply inbox.
Oh yes, and yeah. So and just in closing, one really important point I want to note is that so many people don't use an auto reply. That often it will just go to an email address or black hole. And from a customer experience, I encourage you to always have an auto response at a minimum to say, thank you for sending your email, and someone will get back to you in 3 business days, or saying, this isn't a monitored email address. If you have a question, please call us on 1300, whatever the number is. Just from a customer experience point of view.
Yeah, we've always been on the receiving side of that ourselves, I'm sure, as consumers. You don't want to send an email or reply to an email and then hear nothing. It's nice to get a response, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Andrea, for coming on today. And thank you guys for joining this session, this Lookup Answers session. These are always so much fun to do, and we have another one coming up in another few weeks, but the next event we have coming up is on Thursday. We have a webinar on Social Studio implementation and Social Studio API. So that's a technical marketers meetup. That's going to be a nice little presentation from one of the product managers around the Social Studio. So please join us for that. Special shout out to Gilda. Thank you for organizing these and for all you do for the Marketing Cloud Champions and Marketing Cloud MVPs. And we hope to see you all Thursday. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Everybody have a good day.
Thank you.
Oh, and we will send out this recording in a couple of days. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.